We can start. I'm sure others will arrive as we go along. A very, very warm welcome to you, morning and evening. I'm really looking forward to this evening. My name is Dharma Mega, and I'm the publishing director at Windhorse Publications. So Vimalasara and I have been working together for what's probably almost a year now on her wonderful new book, First Aid Kit for the Mind, which is what we're going to be talking about today. This is what it looks like. First Aid Kit for the Mind. Of course, that's reversed. Sorry about that. Little illustrated book. You probably haven't seen it in real life yet because it's only just fresh, hot off the press. So my job today is just to introduce Vimalasara, the author, and Candradasa, who is going to be interviewing Vimalasara and having a conversation. And they're great people to be in conversation on this topic. So as you probably know, Vimalasara is a multifaceted person, a writer of poetry and plays and quite a wide range of non-fiction books as well, including first aid, including 8-step recovery with Paramabandhu on addiction and using the Buddhist teachings around addiction and recovery. And also a journalist. I want to call you actually a healer, Vimalasara. Lots of different modalities that you bring to this book that are really about healing from trauma and alienation, maybe using lots of internal family systems work and compassionate inquiry, obviously the teachings of the Buddha. So we're very lucky to have you here this evening. And Candradasa will be in conversation with Vimalasara, and Candradasa is also an author, actually also a poet. But the book I'm thinking of at the moment is Buddhism for Teens. And I was saying to him earlier, I wanted to wave his book around as well, but I've given my copy away again, which I think is a very good endorsement of the book. Candradasa is also the director of Dharma Chakra, which is a non-profit or a charity that runs free Buddhist audio and Buddhist Center online. And you also present the Buddhist Center podcast, and you live in Portsmouth. And in your spare time, when you're not writing or working for Dharma Chakra, you also are part of the Buddhist Center at Portsmouth. So I'm really delighted that you'll be having this conversation. I'm just going to hand over to the two of you. We have both people on Zoom and on YouTube. If you have questions, just write them in the chat and we'll make sure we gather them. And if we have time to address the questions, we will. But otherwise, I just really look forward to the conversation between the two of you. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much, Dharma Mega. It's lovely to see you. I'd love to see you too, Walter, and everyone here who's watching or attending on Zoom. And it's especially nice to see you, Vimalasara. I think the last time we were in the same physical space was in Mexico City Buddhist Center. Was it in November, something like that? You just finished a workshop. I was passing through to do something, and suddenly there we were. So it's very nice to suddenly be here with you again.
Great. It is good. It's always good to be in company with you, Candradasa. Yeah.
It was nice actually being invited to do this. It was a bit of a surprise. You just called me on the phone one evening, standing at an airport, I think, on your way somewhere. So very much this kind of, we're passing each other again. And you were saying, do you want to interview me next week? And I was like, okay. And then you were like, I've got to go get my plane. Off you go. And it's one of the, I think, the things I find most beautiful and affirming, not just about our friendship actually, but about our community, is that things like that happen and we're part of something that just it's in flow all the time, and we suddenly coincide here in this space. Really great.
Yeah.
So welcome to your book launch. Congratulations on your book. It's no mean feat to write a book. It's no mean feat. And you've written so many books. Actually, I was looking at your website again, And gosh, the range, Dhamma Mega just alluded to it, the range of stuff that you can turn your mind and heart to is slightly intimidating, actually. I was like, I've like written one book. You've written, what is it, 10? You with your...
It's a mean feat to write one book. So let's kind of
Yeah.
acknowledge that. Yeah.
Well, you're currently my hero for writing 10 books. It's like, and I'm going to name some of your books. So there's people will know 8-Step Recovery, which you wrote with Dr. Parmabandhu Groves, and it's had a really profound effect, I think, in our community, not just as a book, but kind of seeding a new kind of practice at Buddhist centers. You wrote "I'm Still Your Negro," an homage to James Baldwin. You also edited the African Wisdom collection, New Voices Talk Black Liberation, Buddhism and Beyond. And I guess it really struck me when I was looking at your books and reading the introduction to the first aid kit. You bring so much immediate and accumulated experience to the book and to your writing. Not just your personal experience, but also your kind of experience of being subject to gender, racial, colonial stress in society. And you're really upfront about that in your introduction to this book. You don't kind of like try and hide all that away. And throughout the book, all your stories of working with your own triggers, your own trauma, they're so vivid and so present. And that, again, as somebody who's tried to write about what it is to live the Dharma life, that was probably the impression that remained with me most strongly from your book, was how vivid and alive you are in the writing of it. You're really living it, and there's something urgent that you want to communicate to people about it. And that's just, it's fundamentally just so encouraging that you know and see a way through our troubles, our personal troubles. And even when you're acknowledging that it's not easy work, whether it's personal work or systemic work, it's just like you're there, like holding a light in this book. And I just wanted to thank you for that. Actually, I loved reading it. I was thinking, oh man, I've only got 2 days to read this book, but actually, I just got immersed in your book and really loved it. So I thought one way we could start off is, instead of just talking about the ideas, which we will in this book, it's a super practical book, and it's all the way through it as a first aid kit for the mind. There are these beautiful meditations and reflections that you offer: 1 minute, 5 minute, 20-minute reflections. So we thought we'd bookend, if you're watching, or if you're taking part on Zoom, we thought we'd bookend this launch with a couple of meditations or a couple of reflections. And Vimalasara is very kindly going to lead us in the first one, which is a rust reflection. So maybe you can introduce that.
Sure. Thank you for that affirmation. I feel quite moved, actually. So I just want to kind of take a moment to touch into that kind of tenderness that reflected me back. And also to you, Dharma Mega, by actually using the word healer. So I feel more and more that is the place that I step into, being healer. So thank you for seeing that and recognizing that. And yeah, it's just lovely to see people here on the screen, and many of you I have connections with. So, and I don't know who's out there on YouTube. So welcome to those of you who are on YouTube. So yeah, I think the idea of the book was that actually we know that people have such short bandwidth, including myself. I always I want to congratulate you to getting to the end of the book, Candradasa, because I always go, yay, I've got to the end of a book. Do you know what I mean? It's such an achievement. Once upon a time, that was just so easy to get to an end of the book, but there's just so much stimulation on social media and people have short bandwidths. And so really in communication with Dharma Mega was really wanted to make a book that actually, if people have a short bandwidth, then you can still get something from the book. And, you know, if you're somebody who wants more, then you can still get something from the book, this idea of a pocketbook. So, so yeah, a practice called Rust, a 1 minute practice of Rust. So I just an invitation just to bring something to mind that has niggled you recently, just something really small that has just niggled you. We all get niggled, you know. So just bring that to mind for a moment. And we'll go through the rust practice. R stands for recognizing that we've been activated. Just simply that there's activation as we bring this thing to mind. U stands for understanding that we're just caught in a story. You know, when we get activated, we're just caught in a story. So just understanding that we're just caught in a story. S stands for sensations. There will be sensations when we're activated and caught in a story. So just feel the sensations, perhaps sway with sensations, or even stretch the body with sensations. You know, sometimes we need to scream when there are sensations, but just recognizing the sensations and just move the body by stretching or swaying with sensations. And T stands for trust. Trust this too shall pass. And if we're still caught in that story, the T can stand for tell. Just tell the story to relax. Just tell it to relax. And that's practice of rust in 1 minute. And what I want to say about that is it's quite a lot there. So what I say in the book, that you can just call on one of these. It might be when we notice that we're activated, it's just call on the you, just understand you're caught in a story. And that can actually give us some freedom. Or actually activate sensations. Just stretch the body with sensations. Sometimes it's like we have to sit here and be with all these sensations. No, move it in the body. Or we can just call on the T. Just tell it to relax, or trust this too shall pass. Or we can just call on the R and just simply recognize we're activated. That's so powerful. I know when I can call, oh, I'm just activated. Yeah, I can relax.
Wonderful. I'm possibly too chilled now to do the rest of this conversation, but like, I'll make a go of it. I'm glad the rust one I found particularly helpful actually when I was reading the book. I was sitting in a cafe locally yesterday, and I was definitely a little bit activated by something that happened at work, and I was kind of like, And then I was reading your book and thinking about this thing, and I was like, suddenly had a moment where I was like, oh, hang on a minute. This is what they're talking about. It's like this. So I did the rust exercise sitting in this very nice room and felt better. Felt better, which is, again, it sounds like such a simple thing that you feel better, but it's no mean feat to do that. One of the things about your book that I most appreciated was just all the complexities there, the complexity of our conditioning, personal, social conditioning, all of that. And the book just strips it away quite gently. And you've built these reflections and exercises really cleverly around keywords for humankind, like rust, love, fear, stop. And I was particularly impressed that you'd kind of reclaimed the word shame in one of your exercises, which again really resonated for me when I read it. I thought, oh, I'm scared of that word. Like I read it and I'm just immediately scared of it. That's a trigger in itself. And the fact that you turned it around and said, let's reclaim this word and do something really positive with it, I thought that was fantastic. So the book is really strong stuff. And these fundamentals that you evoke, like the crucial role of the breath, again, just right at the start, you get this plumb line that just drops back into the deeply human tradition of Buddhism and just of human life itself. Yeah, your body, your breath, your emotions, your thoughts, your hopes and fears, the arising heart mind, just as a thing that's going on all the time. And one of the things that you do at the start of the book is talk about triggers. So it's all the things that trigger us into needing to become more aware of this work. And you did a set of almost like verses. I don't know where these verses come from, so maybe you could tell us about that. But these kind of trigger verses of watch your triggers, they become stories. Watch your stories, they become excuses. Watch your excuses, they become relapses. Watch your relapses, they become diseases. Watch your diseases, they become vicious cycles. Watch your vicious cycles, they become your wheel of life. It's just like amazing, amazing. It was like when I read that, I thought this is like reading the Heart Sutra or reciting the Heart Sutra internally. These kind of beautifully encapsulated primers for how we remember to work with our mental states, just calling us back, calling us back. There's something almost primal and ritualistic about them. And I wondered, I guess the question for me was, that seems to be one of your key approaches is maybe it's from your poetic training in a way, or your poetic experience, the creating positive rhythmic rituals for all of this work seem to be shot through the whole book, particularly in those verses. Can you talk a bit more about where those verses come from in you?
Yeah, that's yeah, thank you for bringing that to mind. There is something similar, and I can't recall it now. And I can remember reading that and thinking, oh, let me write something in through the lens of addiction. And so it was just something that came. And I think definitely that's the Dharma practice, isn't it? It's like the stories are our identities. You know, it's like, you know, when we can get quite lofty and say, oh, no self, and let go of the self, but actually when we're really thinking about it, what we need to be letting go of are these stories that really fix us. And actually, even this weekend, I was co-leading a retreat, and somebody, you know, in there, as they left, they said, oh my God, I realize I don't have to believe the story. I can have freedom, you know? So in a way, these verses really come from my practice as a Dharma practitioner. I mean, definitely I have so much gratitude for the Dharma and for the Buddhist teachings. And I suppose in a way, what I'm wanting to do is to make those teachings accessible to people who don't necessarily identify as Buddhist, you know, or don't identify as being a mindfulness practitioner. So in a way, I can remember those. I wrote those verses some time ago, and yeah, that's just, you know, you're a writer. Sometimes where does it come from? Those verses didn't come from me. It came from something bigger than me. I think, you know, that's the real. I think I actually say that in the book, that actually at the start, that none of this is original. It's all been done before, hasn't it? And actually, I think that there are times when I write and something bigger is moving through me, and I'm not writing the book, something else is writing it for me.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I guess it's like I almost want you to do. I wish we had the time to do a little seminar now where you just lead us in a line by line Dharma commentary on those verses. Like, what is each one of them? Because it's interesting, isn't it? You start like you have got this wider field of reference than just Buddhist scripture or just Buddhist ideas, even. And recovery is one of them. But actually, there's lots of influences, artistic, cultural influences, all the way through the book. And like you start with triggers, but you end up saying they become your wheel of life, which is an explicitly Buddhist image, right? And it's like, I suppose I'd be interested to hear what is your wheel of life? Like how would you express the wheel of life for us at this point?
And that, isn't it great when we think of poetry, and actually to have these images, and people Buddhists are gonna make it one thing, and other people will make it something else. And for me, I remember many moons ago, coming back from retreat, I was living in London and I was cycling. And I think I most probably write about it in maybe 8-Step Recovery, but anyway. And I stopped on my bike and I cracked up laughing because there I was, this 7-year-old, 8-year-old, watching this hamster get on the wheel, going around and around and falling off, and going round and around and around and falling off. And I was this kid thinking, why on earth does this hamster keep on going on this wheel, going round and around and falling off, and then getting back on it and falling off? And the insight that I had, I was cycling home, I thought, oh my God, I'm that hamster. I'm that hamster getting on the wheel, going round and round and around, and I fall off, and I get back going round and around, and I fall off. And that was it was such a teaching for me to see that, because then again, it was like, how do I slow down that wheel? And today, if I think of that wheel of life, yeah, the reality is that sometimes, I could be in a hungry ghost realm. During the pandemic, I really felt like I was in the animal realm. It's like, what was we doing? It was just like we were waking up, eating, farting, shitting, sleeping, waking up, eating, and just in that animal realm. And and there are times that these stories will put us in the Titan realm, the warring realm. And sometimes, and I do think that story, we can be in the God realm and think, oh, this, and that was another thing. If we think of when the pandemic happened, I always say the God realm ran out for some of us. It was like, we fed out. It's like, oh, we want everything to be positive. We want everything to be lovely. That in itself is a story. People wanting to hold on to that. Yeah. So in a way, definitely for me in my practice, I can go through my life and think, oh, which realm, which realm am I in? Am I in that human realm? Which is, which our teacher, the late Sangharakshita, our teacher, kind of says that is the best place to be, because that's the place which has the possibilities. And to actually acknowledge that there are times when I might be in some of those realms. I mean, the hell realm, that's something that I, once upon a time, I could be very much in that hell realm, but that's not a realm that I frequented. But I could end up in there. You never know. You don't know. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow or even 5 minutes. So definitely for me, so again, as a Dharma practitioner, I can really see that actually these excuses, these stories put us into those realms. Because as we know, samsara is right here now. There's nowhere to go for nirvana, is there? It's right here now. Do you know what I mean? And that, that wheel of life, it's right here now in those mental states.
It's interesting, the balance between that urgency, that kind of really present urgency, which often comes with dukkha, suffering of any kind. And then one of the things again about the book that I really liked is it does feel like you managed to magically create a safe space or a safe realm, maybe a safe world, for it not to be okay, for things not to be okay, right? Like, and I know that also relates to the recovery work and the model that in a way we're all addicted to lots of things. I was a bit fascinated by your raw cashew example. I was like, what has Vimalasara got for raw cashew nuts? It's a bit where, like, that was the example you went to. I was like, what secret suffering lies there for my friend Vimalasara with raw cashew nuts? But I suppose that balance between the sort of safe space where it's okay not to be okay, and you're not going to fix all your problems, but they can be solved, and the book can be like a balm in a way for, the sort of the healing power of pen and ink and paper and ink. Like, I was just reading it as a PDF and it was having an effect on me. But balancing that with urgency, with that sense of like, I really need to engage with this stuff. Like, it's quite a tightrope to walk, but you do walk it very beautifully in the book.
Thank you. And I will speak to the raw cashew nuts. In fact, actually, when we're leading retreats, we can have we can begin to see more clearly ourselves. It's not just the people who are on the retreats, and actually just really I'm actually in a space where I'm not eating cashew nuts. You know, there's a disinterest in them and at the moment, but actually definitely, as I remember a friend saying, oh, they represent mother's milk. And what I really connected into on the retreat, you know, what's driving our desires or our habitual behaviors? What is it? And for myself, I realized that there's that hunger for that mother's love. And actually, as I touch into that, realizing I'm never going to get that. And how can I come into acceptance of that?
Mm-hmm.
How can I begin to let go of the story of mother's love? Because what the hell is mother's love? Do you know what I mean? It's like, what is it? I have a lot of love in my life, and yet there is this story of, you know, of that mother's love, that hunger, that desperation. So again, that really can, you know, holding on to that story can put me into the realm of the hungry ghost realm, you know, could even pivot you back into the hell realm, you know. So it's really, so for me, again, yes, it really is important to hold that balance of these behaviors that we have, because they're protectors. They're there for a reason. You know, it's not like people decide, oh, I'm going to have this habit, you know, I'm going to have this habit because I think this is going to be great. That actually these habits or compulsive behaviors or addictive behaviors have arisen for a reason. And, you know, I mean, my whole perspective, I mean, the book isn't just for people with addictions, it's broader than that. And I would say what's been really great is actually working in the field of addictions. I've really shifted, because there's something like there are bad habits and good habits, bad drugs and good drugs. What's that all about? You know, all of it is somebody is self-medicating, and they've chosen a way to self-medicate. Yeah. And that's what we have to remember, that actually when people are turning away from experience, they're turning away from experience because it's so uncomfortable to be with experience. So why should we give somebody a hard time about that? You know, it's more like to recognize that, and recognizing, you know, what we do in this moment has an impact on the next moment. Yeah. And that actually, if we fall into habitual behaviors, that it does have a consequence. You know, it's the fruits of our actions. Doesn't mean to say, again, often the story is it's going to have a consequence. Oh, it's going to be something awful that's going to happen to you. No, it's just, as we know, that actions do have consequences, which I must admit, Candradasa, that was a teaching I found incredibly difficult to metabolize. Incredibly difficult. You know, I think I've just metabolized it over the past 10 years or so, but that, you know, to actually acknowledge that actions have consequences. Yeah.
Wow. In one way, it doesn't surprise me as an admission because I relate to it. And the other way, it is a big admission, isn't it? That even something as basic as that in Buddhist stuff, like if we're really honest, we don't really believe it. We don't really believe it. I was at the weekend, I was talking to our friend Kamala Sheila, who's dying, and we were recording a conversation about his process of dying. And at one point he said, we were just talking about the fact that we know we're impermanent. We know we're impermanent. And he sort of interrupted me and said, I don't really believe it just now. And I was kind of like, wow, you know, so strong, like that you in a way we're so kind of keyed to life in a particular way and seeing things in a particular way. I guess that's one of the themes of your book is seeing these cycles that we're subject to.
Before
and then
you move on, I didn't know that Kamala Sheila was dying. I missed that. Yeah. So I just want to take a moment to metabolize that. You know, I was thinking, we're all dying. Is he literally dying or whatever? But yeah, I wasn't aware of that. Yeah, I'm obviously not reading my Shabda.
Okay. I'll send you some details afterwards. He's got a really good blog about his process, which is great. Maybe we can share it with anybody on this call. Actually, it's a really wonderful thing to read.
Right.
I guess that, you know, picking up from his conversation into this conversation, this idea that you can see deep habits like that. I don't really believe actions have consequences. I don't believe I'm actually impermanent, even when it's happening. Yeah, it's like seeing those cycles of thought that afflict us, and then seeing that it's possible to do something about it, even if that's really hard. I suppose one question that occurred to me about you is, has the way you've engaged with this work, on trying to undo negative cycles at a personal level, has that changed the way you relate to the world, as it were, politics, and the overwhelming challenge of cyclical violence and difficulty in society? Like, does it feel to you like you're doing something that has an impact, or where the actions do have consequences?
Yeah, thank you for that question. It's a deep question. And one thing that I do believe and always believe, that there is an end of suffering. I do believe that there is an end of suffering. Not that I found the end of suffering, but yet definitely, you know, I think in my own life, you know, my suffering looks so different. And it was, you know, that first truth, that the suffering was almost like, oh my God, I'm human. It's like, yes, suffering will happen and there is an end. So I think in a way, this book really, I hope, will help with people some of that spiritual bypass, because, you know, with that bypassing, we kind of avoid that stuff, and we just want to be in that feeling good all the time, you know. Always, you know, one of my favorite refrains is, we have to always remember that the prince didn't vow to find enlightenment. The prince vowed to find an end of suffering, which to me is just so different. But yeah, so many of us want, you know, we're not interested in finding end suffering. We want the enlightenment, you know, and that we can bypassing that. So just coming back to, you know, this question in the world, that you know, when I open up, you know, to the wars, and the many wars in the world. There's over 30 wars in the world at the moment, and I should say over half of them are on the continent of Africa. And, you know, I just think, wow. And yeah, I do believe, you know, that there is an end of suffering. Yeah. And at the same time, it really makes me think, like, what am I doing with my life? And the fact that, you know, in a way, I am in this God realm, and how can I live my life? And I really do, you know, if we think of what's actually happening out in one part of the world, on the Gaza Strip, I can't, you know, I can't really change what is happening out there. But actually here, when there's such anti-Muslim, anti-Jewish stuff, that with my practice, you know, I can have a change, so that I don't perpetuate that anti-Muslim stuff or that anti-Jewish stuff. Yeah. So, you know, so I think that definitely, that these teachings of Dharma really can have an impact on a micro level, and at some point maybe a macro level. You know, I really do, you know, for me in this book, I think it's just so important is the breath. That breath is medicine. And I think what I want to say about this book is that really for me, it was like, we have it all here, and we're always looking out there, you know. How can we find the answer out there? And yet, you know, the answers really are here. Again, you know, I always think of, like, what was the prince doing, you know, before he became awake? You know, you know, he wasn't listening to you and me, Candradasa. Do you know what I mean? He wasn't reading one of our books, you know. It's like he wasn't on some course that actually was in samadhi. And actually, from being in that place of dropping into samadhi, just became awake. Yeah. And you know, we have to remember that actually the prince faces all those mental states, that whole truckload of mental states, and even past lives, you know. So it's not like it was all blissful, and yet it is possible to have an end of suffering, and possible to have an impact out there in the world. Again, you know, I remember the George Floyd moment, and having for a dark night of the soul, and it was like, actually come back to practice. Yeah. And I always say, you know, when people become mitras and they have that stick of incense, you are the stick of incense to really pervade that scent of the teachings. You know, we can we be practice, you know, can we be practice? And I think more and more of us who can actually be practice and moving around in the world, we can actually have an impact. Yeah.
It's a beautiful image that we are the offering. We are
Mm.
the offering. It reminds me of, I was just, when you were talking there, I had the sense of the Buddha sitting under the tree, and the sort of physicality of that, just the stillness. You can see it in the rupa behind your head, actually, just the sort of somebody just resting completely in themselves, embodied. And that's another key sort of fundamental that you bring into this book all the way through, is it's not just the breath, and it's not just the body as a physical container, but it's the idea of freedom and play, even, and this lovely metaphor of coming home to your body. And there's a bit, I think, where you talk about the four elements, the four major elements, sort of traditional ones of earth, water, fire, and air, as an aid to recontacting our bodies. And presumably then our body's been able to contain all of this stuff, right? All of the big stuff, all of the little stuff. Can you say more about the relationship in your experience between that sort of physicality, where you're just learning to inhabit, in a way, the stuff you're made of, like how that actually helps in terms of the Dharma, in terms of this work?
Yeah, I just think, as you were just saying that, and just watching your hands move, and just saw you kind of viscerally kind of inhabit that, you know, the stuff that we're made of. And I really do believe that, you know, if more and more of us were aware that we are earth, air, water, fire, that we would have a much healthier relationship with the environment. You know, it's like the issue is that we see ourselves separate and other, that we're separate from all of this. You know, what was so wonderful on the retreat that I co-led up at Big Bear, the retreat manager, when people arrived, what they did was they got people to walk around and go and be with a tree and connect to the tree. That was, and I just thought, that's just such a wonderful thing, to just connect with the tree, smell the tree, just know and be part of the tree. So in a way, I really do feel that when we become aware that we're not separate, then we're going to have so much more metta towards the environment. You know, I talk to trees, I go and hug trees, I say hello to the plants. Yeah. And also, as well, I think that definitely there've been times when I've been out in nature and I just crack up laughing, because impermanence is there. Of course, nothing is born, nothing dies. You see it for a moment, like here where I'm sitting in this chair, I forget that. But actually, there's moments when it's just like, yeah, it's such a teaching. And, you know, when we can really connect to that, we really can connect to some of these teachings of impermanence, you know, of, you know, anatta non-self, of unsatisfactoriness. So again, how do we come home to the body? And that's been a real teaching for me, because, you know, coming from a background of sexual trauma in childhood, I was completely split from the body, and coming from physical trauma as a child, completely split from the body. You know, nobody was home. And actually part of that healing as scary as it was to come home to the body. And for some people, coming home to the body is really trusting what's happening in the body. Because, you know, some people's conditioning have been made to think that actually they've been gaslit, basically. It's like being made to think that actually it's wrong and what they were feeling in the body was completely wrong. And so have lost connection with the body. I mean, often, you know, one of the cliches in the field of recovery is saying that addiction is disconnection, you know. But I would just say life is about disconnection. And how can we connect back to those basic things of just knowing that, you know, at the moment, knowing I'm heat, it's like I can feel the heat and I can feel the heat in the body, and knowing that I couldn't survive, even if that's a way in of knowing we can't survive without earth, water, fire, or air. It's not possible, not possible. So even if we can begin to just see that on a cognitive level before it drops down into onto a visceral level. And that's one of the things actually really talking about in the book, I think, again, you know, how the mind can drop into the heart more, you know, that it's not separate. I mean, it's so great now in the field. There's some very interesting stuff in the field of addiction, and actually really seeing that the mind is in the gut, that it's not just here, that actually, you know, where is the mind when we begin to point to it? Actually, the mind is in the whole body, but yet we're just so kind of cut off here. Yeah.
Mm. It's strong stuff. The first aid kit is strong medicine, isn't it? It's kind of, I was thinking actually it's like if you did a little straw poll of Windhorse Publications readers, you know, people who love Windhorse Publications books, and said, what is going to be in a small, really beautifully produced pocketbook? Even the phrase pocketbook is so nice, right? It's going to be nice. And of course, there's lots of loveliness in the book. I bet you most people would not say, Vimalasara is going to use as part of this very small amount of space to talk about the Takasantana Sutta. Like now, I was like, oh, they went there, amazing, right? Like it requires that kind of strength. And when I hear you talk about the body and the elements and the strength of our delusion, I can see why in a way you went there. But it's quite a bold move to really embrace the imagery of that text, right? Imagining, just in case you're not familiar with this text, folks, imagining that the thoughts that oppress you and that you carry around in daily life are like a rotten carcass hanging around your neck. So, one question that immediately occurred to me was, why did you go for it with that rather than, you know, do something nicer and make it a bit softer and more modern and, you know, something that would fit nicely in a pocketbook, that would fit nicely in a handbag or a wallet, you know?
That was a compromise, as Dharma Mega know. I kind of wrote near to the end of putting it together. I was like, on the last page, I want the word stop. But, you know, it's like, okay, I don't think we could go there or whatever. And you totally get that. I think that actually it's a fantastic sutta, and actually it resonates for me. I think I use an experience where it's like that whole shattering of stop. And it's interesting because you know, it's okay to say that I'd asked Dick Schwartz, who founded IFS, to do a endorsement, because I know Dick and blah blah blah. And, you know, Dick was great. He wrote and said, you know, I can't, as much as I really appreciate the work that Vimalasara does and love Vimalasara, I can't endorse this book because, you know, and he didn't say why. And I'm thinking, what is it? What is it? And then ping, I thought, oh, I know IFS, because it's all about parts and bringing, you know, there are no bad parts. That's one of his most recent books. So yeah, it was strong. And I actually asked, you know, okay, it's all right, you don't need to endorse it, but let me quote you to see a different way, although there are different ways already in the book, but then actually that can be missed to actually just see that there are different ways with working with thoughts. And you asked me, I just think it's such a good, strong medicine. And especially if you are habitually in that cycle of thinking, you know, habitually, you know, forget about, you know, people, you know, here, if I was to ask people who are here on this call, how many of you would welcome somebody listening into your thoughts 24/7? How many of you? And I'm sure nobody's going to put their hand up, okay? So we're all, you know, we are all assailed by this, you know. And again, I love, you know, for me, the allegory of the Prince's enlightenment, I love, because in a way, we see that stinking thinking played out. You know, it's at some point, you know, the prince thinks that Mara's trying to kill him, you know, that whole paranoia, you know. So we all have that. And so, you know, this is such a pithy and explicit teaching. And that's why I thought I can't steer clear from that actually, yeah.
Fantastic. Oh, there's so many things I want to ask you. I'm aware we're coming sort of into the closing phase of this, and I want to leave time for one last practical reflection that people can do at home. So I suppose that maybe a kind of last area to go into a little bit is you probably won't like this description of yourself, Vimalasara, but it strikes me that these days you're sort of becoming a real elder in our community, in the best possible sense of an elder. And you know, you've got, maybe in the last 10, 15 years, you've got this experience of a lot of change yourself, a lot of engagement with the world, ordaining other people into a tradition, you know, for the first time, and really stepping up and taking your sort of place in it. So one of the things that occurred to me was this thing about going back to your trigger verses about watch your cycles, they become the wheel of life. And we explored a bit about what we mean by the wheel of life, etc. But how has the way you talk about liberation and freedom changed through that experience of like initiating other people and like bringing them into something that's, you know, even part of your own life's work, and sort of taking your place as someone who's now got a body of experience to share? You know, what comes after the wheel of life at this point with this, at this point in your journey? And are you turning back to some of your own book and the material of the work of your book in that yourself? That's about 5 questions, but you can try to pick whichever one you like.
I think my response actually is I was somebody who knew I'd been mentoring them for the past couple of years on a Dharma course that they've been in, and they've come to the end, and it's like, you know, what next? And they see themselves more and more Buddhist, and it was like, you need Sangha, you need community, you need Sangha. And it's like, you know, no pressure, but, you know, we are in San Francisco on Bartlett Street, you know, 21st and Valencia. It'd be really good to see you and actually really see that. So let me just kind of dial back that actually in North America, they're so used to having, you know, they want a teacher, one teacher and whatever, and we don't work that way. And it's always like, actually, you know, if you want to connect more, you know, it's, you know, these are our, this, you know, Sangha, and connect with Sangha, and really encouraging that. So that's something that I do more and more when I'm out there in the world and people are wanting more, and can I be their teacher or whatever. And it's like, no, actually, it's more than just having one teacher. You know, for me, I did that the emphasis of spiritual friendship and Sangha is really important. So that's one way. And then again, I think, you know, Candradasa, it's a challenge, isn't it, writing books like this? You know, because it's like, again, I think I say, do I believe it works? You know, that's it. I think I do say, you know, does it work? And I do believe it works. And actually, that there are times when, you know, I won't drink my own medicine. You know, so it's a real, it's and yet at the same time knowing I don't have to be perfect. I think really for me, this book, you know, kind of writing something like this keeps me on the path. And it's a big reminder on the path, because what happens is that people read that work and they connect with me, and you know, and it keeps me on the path. As they say in the rooms of 12 steps, that your sponsee keeps you sober, you know. And in a way, it's like people who come across my work help to keep me on the path. Although I will actually say, and I don't know whether I'm answering your question or not, I've just really had a strong sense of my ordination, and a real strong sense of just thinking, you know what, the fact that I was ordained in India, that actually I really am a child of the Buddha. There's no turning back. There's something about that. And you know what's so interesting is, I don't know if I've ever told you this story, but that moment when I was walking to the kuti, and I'd been doing yoga and doing double yoga with samatha and whatever, and just like really in the heavens and just like this seduced, seductive place. And I'm walking to the kuti, and like I would say, like a minute before entering the kuti, a thorn went right through my flip-flops and said, "Wake up to what you're doing. Wake up." And I think I remember that. And so in a way, you know, this book is about waking up. Yeah. You know, just wake up. So for me, again, I think like, how can I continue waking up? And again, I always say, I think I say somewhere in the book, if this doesn't work, then try something else. You know, if you're a Dharma practitioner and you're not getting freedom, because these practices are about freedom, these practices are about liberation. If we're not getting freedom, we're not getting liberation. What's going on? And maybe we have to take the advice of our teacher Sangharakshita, who says, if you're struggling in your meditation practice, and I see that as all of it, struggling in your daily practice, then take a look at your ethical practice. What's going on ethically? Yeah. So in a way, for me, I'm about freedom. You know, I hope with the work that I do, the private practice I have, the work that I do, that people will have more freedom, and that I too will have more freedom.
Well, that's a pretty beautiful way to bring us into the closing bit of this. It's a really great gift. You've given a really great gift with this book, Vimalasara. The inclination I had after finishing it was to give it to people, just to what do you do when you get given a gift? You pay it forward, you pass it on. I wish somebody had given me this when I was a teenager. I think it would have helped quite a lot with some of the work. So in a way, just thank you for the beautiful gift. I can attest to the fact that it does work, even from just a couple of days of engagement with it in a cafe. You're gonna close us out before we hear from Dhamma Meg about how you can buy this beautiful book. You're gonna close us out with a 1-minute kindness reflection.
I will do, and I just want to say thank you for a fantastic interview. You've made the book sound brilliant. So I just wanted to say
it is brilliant.
All right. And just also thank you for Dharma Mega for having the vision, and thank you for Windhorse for publishing the book, and thank you for those of you who will read the book. So a 1-minute kindness practice. Let's just do a practice of love. Yeah. Self-love. Yeah. Love. L stands for liking or loving an aspect of yourself. So just take a moment to find something that you like or love about yourself. Even if it's just staying and listening to this conversation. Love. O stands for owning your uniqueness in all its oddities. So just take a moment to own your uniqueness. V stands for validate. So place a hand upon your body and feel the warmth of your own hand validating your existence. We don't need anybody else to validate us. So really feel the warmth of your hand validating your existence. And E stands for just embrace this precious moment. Just embrace this moment right now as you give yourself some love, liking an aspect of yourself, owning your uniqueness, validating your existence, and embracing this moment. Thank you. And just to say that these meditations are recorded. So, yeah, you can actually listen to me doing these short meditations.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Vimalasara. Thank you, Candradasa, for a really well, I've been sitting here with a grin on my face, feeling very moved actually by your conversation. Real and honest and sensitive and probing. I feel like we've had a long meditation on the nature of disconnection and the work of reconnecting with our bodies and the elements and each other. And my sense overall is of faith in action, you know, in writing the book and in the conversation and in your own life's kind of journey. It's very it feels infectious and in the best possible way. So I'm very grateful for that and all of the work that you put into making this thing available to move into the world with others. So you will have seen on the chat the link to the book and the product page. So you can see that there's a link to where you can see the audio recordings. We've also put in the link to Kamala Sheila's blog. I know we mentioned earlier that conversation about Kamala Sheila. So thank you. I mean, that's all I want to say, really. Thank you. And thank you to Walter for hosting the tech and for all of you for being here. It's been really good to speak. And I wish you well, and I wish the book well as it moves into the world. I invite you to explore it and try it out. It's one of those books I can imagine giving to a lot of people who are hurting or who are bewildered, and I can imagine myself included. You know, there will be a gem in there for everybody. Thank you.
I would just want to thank you, Dhamma for publishing books like this. It's you probably get overlooked in these launches because you're just holding the space for everyone else, but you know, you could be doing an amazing number of things with your life, and you're just bringing out these fantastic books that are remaking a whole tradition of the way our community engages with publishing. And I think you've sort of almost single-handedly dragged it into the future in a way, and it's so affirming that you're bringing out books like Vimalasara. It's wonderful. So sad.
Thank you, Candradasa. Not single-handedly. There's a great
Not
team.
single-handedly, you and the team, but you're the. I just want to praise you for a second as the person running the whole shebang. Thanks,
Candradasa. Yeah, wish you well with the rest of your days and your evenings. The video of this will be up on YouTube within a few days if you wanted to take a look at it again or share it with anybody. So take care. Be well. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.